Okay, so we have 3 groups that need to go today for their group presentation, so we'll do that. And the next class period, we will move on, as I said, with employee responsibilities, since we talked about employee rights. And then we'll move into the chapters on product and price, and then place and promotion. And so that's where we're sort of headed towards the end of the semester. So which group wants to go first? There are 3 groups that need to go. You gonna go? All right. Don't act so enthusiastic about it. Oh, for some reason the screen didn't come out. Yeah.
Okay, so we did our paper over deceptive advertising through the subconscious mind. We based it off the theory of social egoism.
I'll just explain from the slide. Okay, so part of ours we did ours based off of the movie Focus. It's just it does a little bit of the subconscious mind through one of their scenes. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, it came out like last year sometime, but it pretty much it's Will Smith plays a character named Nicky, and he's a con artist, and he's deceiving people, and he gets into their subconscious mind and tricks them into betting on certain things or doing certain things for him. And so the scene that is about to be explained is pretty much they go to a sporting event. It's a football game, and he knows a notorious gambler is there. So he's there with his friend. Her name is Jessie, and they start making bets with this gambler, and they're winning and losing. Well, he ended up betting $1 million, and he loses. And he says, "Okay, so we'll do this, double or nothing. I'll choose a player down on the field. You choose a player on the field. And if we guess the same, then it's double or nothing. I'll take the money and go." And he goes, "No, I don't bet on crazy." He goes, "Well, what if you choose a number and then Jesse picks a number as well, and if it's the same number, then same." And he goes, "Okay, I'll do that." Because that's pretty much next to impossible. Well, they both ended up choosing the number 55, and pretty much this next scene kind of shows how they got that gambler to choose 55.
And it shows the subliminal messages that were leading up to this moment.
How did you do that?
You want to say, legendary gambler. He bets on everything, anything, huge cash bets all the time. Wants the Bellagio with little gigs out of the high roller suite because Lee Wild's fine. He is the perfect pick.
How did you know who he was going to pick?
Told him to. Been telling him all day. From the moment he left his hotel room, we've been priming him, programming his subconscious. He's been seeing the number 55 all day long. On the elevator, in the lobby, even the stick pin on the doormat. Not only that, we loaded his route from the hotel to the stadium. He looks out the window, primers are everywhere. Now he doesn't see it, but he does. There's no getting around it. He even sees far. Suggestions are everywhere, from the number of flowers in a vase.
That is genius.
Yeah, and it's not only what he sees, it's what he hears. The Mandarin word for 5 is woo. There are 124 woo-woos in sympathy for the devil. Now he's not registering it, but it's all there. So when he picks up those binoculars, looks out on the field, sees a familiar face with the number 55 on his jersey, some little voice in the back of his mind says, that's it. And he thinks it's intuition, and he picks.
Well, that was just to kind of show like the subliminal messages, and we chose an article that was talking about the subliminal messages being sent to you throughout the day, and 75% was a quote in there, 75% of everything we do is actually done through our subconscious mind. So we kind of wanted to animate that to use that focus.
And then also another way that the companies use subliminal advertising is marketing one certain product, but subconsciously they're marketing you a completely different type of product. Kind of goes into your human desires. So we found another advertisement of Carl's Jr. They were promoting their like spicy turkey or burger milk, and so we have another clip for you.
So you're being sold something other than the burger. They're using the sex appeal to sell it. So subconsciously, like Logan, he's like, yeah, I'm going to Carl's Jr.
So, in conclusion, just advertisers try and market your different products through our subconscious mind that plays a daily role in our decisions and the way that we think and act. This relates to social egoism because these companies are acting in their own self-interest and kind of controlling the way that your consumers make decisions.
And I know that the slide messed up, but there was another one about Coca-Cola, probably 50, 60 years ago. They ran this study. They would put a Coca-Cola little pop-up in the movie theaters, and it only be for a split second, so you couldn't really register it, but you were registering it in your mind. And so it kind of sparked that craving instinct that they get. So you'll see it, and then you'll be like, oh, I want a Coke. But you're not really being targeted because they'll put it in the previews before the movie starts and just pop up and go away, and pop up and go away. So you're not really being targeted, but you are. You just don't realize that you are. And it just the slide and stuff.
So this has been a big controversy as to whether or not you actually can influence people with subliminal messaging. And the research, I think, tends to suggest that it's less effective than what we might think it is. It's less nefarious than what we might believe. But clearly, I mean, they still think it works in terms of that it used to be that you would see generic stuff in movies. And now you don't see generic stuff in movies anymore. You see product placement, and product placement is a big deal. I mean, to get your product placed in movies. And what's the most successful product placement in history? Does anybody know? A lot of people think it's Reese's Pieces in the movie E.T., but it's actually not, because Reese's Pieces was already a fairly big brand. It's probably, depending on the way you calculate ROI, it's probably Red Stripe beer. In the movie The Firm, Gene Hackman says, and nobody had ever heard of this beer before. It shows up in the movie The Firm, and he says to Tom Cruise, "Give me a Red Stripe out of the fridge." And all of a sudden that beer goes from being this local microbrewery, what we call a microbrewery, to being a fairly popular beer and sold in a lot of places. And so that may be the most successful product placement in history. So is product placement also the same as subliminal, do you think? Or is that less problematic? They now pay for product placement.
I don't think product placement would be like the subliminal messages. I think kind of, yeah, it's like the red stripe. You don't think about it, you're like, oh yeah, I was in that movie, so I should probably drink it too.
You had in your presentation the Carl's Jr.'s ad. Does sex sell? Do you think that ad works? You think it does work? I don't think that ad works.
I think you just see a freak.
I don't think that ad works at all. Does sex sell?
Depends on what you're selling.
I think that's right. Martin Lindstrom argues in biology that sex doesn't sell. That we think it does and we continue to use it, but that it doesn't really sell. And he points to, and I think he's absolutely wrong in this, he points to the Calvin Klein jean commercial years ago with Brooke Shields that were very provocative. And I think sex sells in that instance because what? Calvin Klein jeans were sexy. They were intended to be sexy. I think sex sells at Victoria's Secret. I think sex sells for Calvin Klein jeans. I think sex sells for things like cologne, perfume, things in which there is a congruency between the item being sold and the desire that you would. Do you think that ad actually sold you on the Carl's? I mean, there's nothing really sexy about a big greasy chicken sandwich, is there?
Well, it's kind of like unrealistic because you don't really look like that when you're eating a burger.
It was a chicken sandwich, wasn't it? Was it?
I don't know what it was.
I think it was
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't think that works. You talked about in the movie they talked about, and one of you mentioned rational betting. Is there such thing as a rational bet? There's rationality
I
in
don't
betting
think betting
usually.
is rational at all, but what they were doing, I think they thought it was.
So you don't think betting is at all rational?
I always lived, so no.
Okay.
Never won any bells.
So what types, I think that there's levels of rationality to betting, actually. And if you take Dr. Worker or Dr. Ginchev's sports marketing, you'll go to the track one day and she'll teach you how to bet. I think that's a more rational bet. Because you can look at the statistics and make a judgment. I'm not saying it's completely rational, but I think it's more rational than sitting in front of a slot machine. So he says, I don't make uneducated bets. Is that what you said he said in the movie? Betting, it seems like, betting on whether or not you pick the same number is pretty uneducated bet. wouldn't you think? Or is that educated and rational?
Well, I mean, you set it up pretty well, but I mean, you're kind of going off like, is, you know, I have to really choose this number, like, is this really gonna work? So you really don't know if this is gonna work or not. But the way he executed his plan that was shown was pretty, like, skilled. Like, he knew what he was doing, and he knew how to get people to choose a certain number. But
Yeah.
it's still not 100%.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting about that thought, if that's a thought experiment, I don't know, what, it was for $1 million. Don't you think that would have cost more than $1 million to set that whole thing up? As I'm sitting there watching it, I'm just, you know, to get them to put 55s on the chandeliers in the hotel, to get the bellman, I mean, they're gonna have to be paid something, to get the people that are walking by to wear 55. The protesters, don't you think that's gonna be about $1 million?
Well, it was double or nothing, so it was $2 million.
Oh, $2 million, okay. Well, maybe it was worth it. All right, very interesting presentation, thanks. Who wants to go next?
But I did look at it.
And then like, before they came, you were I was behind you, but he already turned.
Hello, I'm Cindy, Alex,
Anthony.
and we did our project over euthanasia. What is euthanasia? It is the painless killing of a patient suffering from an incurable and painful disease or an irreversible coma. But there are also different types of euthanasia. There's non-voluntary, in which the patient cannot make a decision or their wish is known. Passive euthanasia, in which the patient is withdrawing from life-sustaining treatments or withdrawing treatment from the patient. However, the most commonly one known is physician-assisted suicide. Euthanasia is illegal in most countries, and it's only legal in 4 states right now. Our report goes over whether it's ethical or not to do such a thing.
So the dilemma with euthanasia is it ethical or unethical? The doctor or physicians are sworn to take the Hippocratic Oath, and that just means they're to provide the best care for someone that's ill and provide that care to the best of their ability. So this upholds the ethical standards and treats those patients. So one could argue, is it ethical to keep someone on life support or go ahead and pull them off that? So, I mean, there's just a lot of factors involved. I mean, you have the family's decisions, and that could conflict with the physicians, but I mean, that's really a situation that, I mean, of course, I wouldn't want to be in. That would just be something very difficult to handle.
And another thing is medical technology is advancing really rapidly. A few hundred years ago, I mean, smallpox killed millions and millions of people, and they thought there's no cure for it, and I mean, it was just taking over. And with medical technology advancing as rapidly as it is, who's to say that someone dying from a disease who decides to get euthanized, a week later there's a cure for that disease and they could have been back to normal in a few months. So that's another problem with it. But another thing is the government or paying for to keep someone on life support or keeping them alive and all these medical costs is really expensive. And so to euthanize someone, I mean, it's a pill that's $35, $40. So what would keep a doctor trying to save someone's life when instead of just like saying, you know, your best option is basically to die. And so that's another problem that people have with it. But it's really up to the person, I think. But that's sort of where she comes in to explain her stance.
Okay, so our stance is that it's ethical if used for the good and never for the evil. As in, the patient, by the doctor is to do what is best in the patient's interest. I know we all see, you know, on Facebook, oh, there's a cure for cancer, or oh, this creates cancer. Well, in reality, we all know that doctors are good at what they do. They are in the loop, not what Facebook or any other social media may say. Therefore, they know whether technology is advancing as far as whatever that person may have, a brain tumor, you know, that might be killing them, might be painful, hurting them. They might know there isn't going to be any cure within that person's life existence. Therefore, they should be able to inform the family that it might be best to go ahead and end their pain because there's not hope for a cure at that point. So it should be based on care and what the doctor in general thinks is in the best interest of the patient. But we also feel that both the doctor and the family should be coincide. They should both have the understanding of what's best for that person. That's where we said it's ethical. Question?
Do you feel that a doctor asking a family member to sign a DNR and then removing life support is the same thing?
Yes and no, because from personal experience, my Gigi, she's just 104 years old. The lady won't die. She won't. She's a trooper. They did that. We took her off of everything, and they told us that's what it was going to do, and it didn't do it. Instead, it just created more problems, and then we actually ended up putting her back on stuff because they said that she should have gone in 24 hours, and on day 3, I mean, you know, looking at your family member, you know they're in pain, and so at that point, we really wish that we could just end it.
So why didn't
Just because she's seen her, I mean, days and days, like she's literally on 4% on breathing and just not dying. Like, it's worse to see her suffer like that than at a 60%. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I feel like you should be able to.
Well, to do like the euthanasia, that can only be her choice, right? You can't, that can only be her choice, because it's like mercy killing, I guess is what they call it, I don't call it suicide. But like mercy killing, like the doctor can't like say, this is what you should do.
I don't think that the doctor should I think that the doctor should have input as far as, hey, this is your option. Tell them this is
what's going on, and there's not any hope. Like, you're going to suffer through this for the rest of your life. It's your decision to do what you want to do.
I wish that was an option. I wish that was, hey, this is, let's talk her. You know what I mean? Let's explain everything at that point. But she no longer has a say. I mean, everything's put over to like micro, so she no longer has a say.
So, you're not advocating that the doctor would have
Full say.
full say, you're advocating that the doctor could,
Needs to have that input as far as.
Since it's like illegal now and you can't do it, like, we're saying that you should be able to have that option.
It's the doctor's duty to provide all options to the patient, but in the end, it's the patient's choice. But if the patient was unable to make their wishes known, then at that point, it would be up to whoever does it.
yeah, but do you think the patient should have to have a end-of-life directive in order for that person to be able to do that? Or do you think we ought to be able to do the same thing that we do to animals? You know, I mean, if we have an animal that is, you know, really, really suffering, we make the decision. Obviously, the animal can't make the decision, we make the decision for them.
Yes.
You think that they should do that?
I don't think doctors should. I think that state attorney of the patient should have that decision.
What if the patient throughout their life had said, I don't care what the costs are, hell be damned, you will do everything to save me, every extraordinary measure that you can to keep me alive, that's what I want. Should somebody then be able to, should a family member be able to say, well, they're you know, in a coma, let's go ahead and administer the drug?
Not if they've said that for their whole life. Like, if it's their will to live, no matter what, then you do that for them. But if they said, like me personally, if I were to go on life support, and if you were to take me off, I would die. Like, I would want that because I don't feel like it's normal. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like being kept alive without, on my own. I don't think I'd want that.
Maybe there should be more, paperwork involved before, as far as whether it's insurance or whatever planning. We have kids. I have a will set out as right now. So I think people who are prepared, you can never be prepared for, going into life support, I guess, unless you're just older. But the more prepared you are, as far as, yes, if I'm a vegetable, pull plug, I don't want that. So I think that's.
Yeah, this was a controversial case, and it came up in Florida in a case called Terry Schiavo, where the family, the mother and father said that they wanted to keep her on life support, and they said she was responsive. The doctor said there was limited brain function. Her husband said that she wanted to pull the plug. Or that's what she had indicated. There was no strong indication. There was some testimony by people that she had gone to a movie one time and said, oh, if I'm ever like that, I don't want to stay alive. I don't know that that's conclusive testimony. The reason that this is so controversial is that this is the way the Nazis started. They didn't start with killing the Jews. They started with euthanizing the disabled. And euthanasia literally means good death. And they started saying, these people don't have quality of life. Well, what constitutes a quality of life for you may be different than what constitutes. And so they were doing it to people that were mentally deficient. Well, I'm not sure that they don't have some quality of life. If you've ever been, and my niece worked for a long time, we used to go visit her out at this camp called Make Promises Happen. And if you see those kids, a lot of them are severely disabled, but they are enjoying some amount of life. And this is the way the Nazis started. And so this is something that I think we're very, very, and rightfully so, skeptical of. And it's one of the reasons that there are so few states that will allow for suicide. In most states, and it's sort of a ridiculous law, in most states it's illegal to commit suicide. Now, I don't know how you enforce that, but it's against the law. this goes to in terms of marketing, a property rights issue. And I've talked about this before in this class, what is property? Is your body property? Well, some of the things that you might think of as being property are not your property. Your body is not your property. It's creepy. You can't sell your body. It can't be stuffed and put in the corner. But it's a very, this is a very, very difficult issue when you start talking about this. One of the things that you can see from a marketing perspective and doing a cost benefits analysis, which we're talking about $30 to $40, to provide the medication for a patient to be euthanized. Well, you could see insurance companies, and they basically do this. I mean, there are arguments that basically what they do when they deny coverage is they determine people's death. And it's one of the things that, I think we're a little skeptical on, and maybe rightly so. An interesting topic, though. Any other questions? All right. We have one more group.
Alex, I'm sorry. Oh.
My name's Katie. I'm Cassie. I'm Joanna. And we chose to further talk about the Apple case and how the FBI, they further unlocked, they unlocked the phone that was found in the San Bernardino shooting, and we're gonna further talk about this. So the timeline in December of 2015, 2 people shot and killed 14 people in San Bernardino, California. The FBI wanted to get one of the phones to see if they could predict any of the actions of those 2 people. So they got the phone, but they locked themselves out. And then they asked Apple to build a backdoor to access it, but then Apple said they didn't want to help, so they refused, and they released a statement to their customers and everyone pretty much about their stance against the FBI. So then recently, the FBI broke into the phone without Apple's cooperation, and then Apple asked the FBI to reveal how they did that, because they wanted to fix or see the holes in the privacy system so they could fix it. And then the FBI decided to share with fellow law enforcement how they did it, but they wouldn't tell Apple, and this was just in case it's made in trial.
So basically, you can argue that the FBI, at the beginning of this whole case, took the utilitarian approach against Apple, basically arguing that they wanted Apple's cooperation because it would be the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people if they could find out, if there was anyone else involved or what the plans were or why the shooting happened. Because basically, it justifies unlocking the phone. But now that the FBI is refusing to help Apple, you could say that's psychological egoism, because now they're kind of doing to Apple what Apple did to them. So I feel like it's more of a, well, you wouldn't help me, so I'm not helping you situation. And the fact that they're helping other law enforcement or they're telling other police stations or state FBIs how they unlocked a phone, and they won't tell Apple.
So looking at Apple, obviously, the utilitarian approach, in the beginning, again, saying that the greatest good was to keep, the rights to their iOS systems and protecting other companies from having to build backdoors to their systems as well was the greatest good in the end. Once everything sort of kind of fell out, I think they took a more deontological approach, saying it was their duty to inform the people by releasing the letter, and even like asking the FBI to turn over the, to see if they would cooperate it was their duty to try. It was their duty to say, well, is there a way that you can give us what you did so we can fix it in the future? So I just basically stuck to that, or they did throughout the whole situation.
Okay, then we went through each issue that was addressed and decided if it was ethical or unethical. So with the first one, the FBI asking Apple to build a backdoor, we said that was ethical because they were really only trying to protect the good of the people, and they were just hoping Apple would help. The second one, when Apple refused and released an open letter stating their stance, we also said that one was ethical because they are a private company. They have the right to choose their duty to the customers over helping the FBI. The third one, FBI breaking into the phone without their cooperation. We said that one was questionable because we don't really know the means in which they went about getting the information, but ultimately they were just trying to do their job. The fourth one, Apple asking the FBI to reveal how they hacked in. We said that was ethical because the duty of Apple to their customers to ask and to try to fix the holes in their security. And the last one, the FBI refusing to help and sharing with fellow law enforcement. We said that was unethical. If the FBI was trying to do the greatest good, they would have helped them not share the software they created to use for no other purposes than to send a message to Apple.
And even since this last time, or when we created this, I think it was yesterday, the FBI pretty much released the name of the firm that did break into the Apple thing. And I think it was like 15 hours ago, an Italian guy was like trying to pay this company like $3 billion to like acquire that software so he could take it privately and start hacking into people's phones. So maybe it could work. So we were going to start the conversation by you guys picking sides. So if you want to, you can text 22333 and then the number that you agree, and we can kind of see what side you're on.
So those are like current numbers and say who.
Yeah, so you text, that's the like phone numbers up there,
Yeah.
22333, and then you put this in the message or body of your text message.
Oh, that's like an okay.
And so, the first number is if you're siding with the FBI, and then the second one is with Apple.
Do you have a live poll?
It is,
Yeah.
it's live.
Okay.
Everybody kind of get it.
Yeah, it looks like people are overwhelmingly obviously agreeing with Apple, especially with like the information that we just recently received in the last couple of days. And it's hard for me because I can see both sides as far as like the government, like obviously with the shooting, you want to know like, was there someone else involved? Is this going to happen again? What, but also for the privacy, like Dr. Geary said in the past, like, do we really have privacy? Not really. So, but I think it's fair for Apple to want to try to figure out if there's holes in their security system. And for me, like my bank account and stuff, I check all of that on my phone. So I don't like to know that it's that easy for someone to hack into my phone and get all that info.
Do you know what information they got from that phone, or did they?
Somebody released that it went back all the way to 2008 on the guy's phone, and they also said that specific, what they had built it for was for the 5C generation and lower. So a lot of like tech companies or even Apple, they haven't released anything, but most of like the reviewers and stuff predict that Apple will like up their security even more with this next update. So it's really not, you know, like huge for people that upgrade all the time, but since this, like it has been created, it's gotta be pretty easy to kind of like, you know, update it with whatever's happening. If they already figured it out once, then, and Apple has no idea how or how they went through that, there's no way for them to like build a better wall in that specific area.
It'll affect their sales, so.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it might a little, but not. It seemed like the story was very big at the beginning, but as things keep coming up, like people aren't seeing it. Like if it were that huge of a deal, you guys would have known because that's been out for 2 days at a time. Guys trying to buy stuff. So
I think if the Italian guy did buy it and that came out,
yeah,
I think that would become a much bigger deal, and I think that would definitely affect. I think people are gonna be a little more skeptical, probably, but Apple has a huge name.
That's a really good question that you asked, because it goes to one of the heart of this issue, which is, how are you gonna really calculate what the greatest good is here? I think a lot of people would say, look, if we can learn something that stops future, you know, my deal was, you've got these two people, and you're probably not gonna learn anything. And then you have to do an ex post facto analysis of, well, we didn't really learn anything other than these two whack jobs were out there who sort of decided that they were gonna follow the Islamic State. And that's one of the things that they're doing, is they're not as organized as Al-Qaeda is. They are much more individualistic, and they encourage people to sort of do it in the name of Islam. And you're never gonna learn very much from somebody's phone on that, because it's very hard to detect that kind of terrorism. I mean, if somebody wants to go and become, Messianic or psychotic or things like that, it's very difficult to detect that. You know, the Ted Kaczynskis of the world, you go out and he was, for all of you who are too young to remember this, he was the Unabomber, the envelope bomber. Brilliant guy. You know, I think he was a math professor, had a PhD in I believe, mathematics, and, you know, started sending out letter bombs. And that's going to be very difficult to detect. It may not be difficult to find them once they've committed a crime, but that is one of the things that makes law enforcement very difficult. If there isn't a crime, there isn't an investigation. So it is responding to things sort of after the fact. And a lot of these people that are disgruntled. Could you have really stopped Columbine? Could you have stopped those kids? I mean, in retrospect, people said, oh yes, it was obvious that they were psychotic. Well, I don't know. So I think that's an interesting question, is how do you calculate the greatest good? Are people going to stop buying Apple? Are they going to stop using the phone? I mean, a lot of our economy is consumer consumption, and guess what? This is a raging machine for that consumption now. How many of you buy stuff on your phone?
Everything on my phone.
How many of you shop on your phone? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how you calculate that. You all did something that was really unique, and that's this poll, and that was, that'll win you bonus points right there. So
I'm just glad it worked, to be honest.
That was an excellent tie-in. So very good presentation. All right. So we finished the group projects. So on Thursday we will talk about employee responsibilities and move into products and things like that. Any questions?
When is our next test?
You get the second test, the last class period, and it'll be due at the time of the final. So you'll bring it to the final.
And then have the final in class?
Yeah, the final is in class. And I'll do a review in the last class period for the final. All right? Okay.